Welcome to the FNO InsureTech Podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world. Welcome to another edition of FNO InsureTech. You are here, witness once again to how interesting, broad, and vast InsureTech is. And today, we have on people who've been with us many times before, two of the more generous people in the InsureTech space, the founders, the originators, the chairman and CEO, the big cheeses of the amazing conference InsureTech Connect are with us once again to do their annual FNO InsureTech Connect preview episode. Isn't that right, Lee? I got that all out.
You got a lot of that out. And yes, we couldn't be happier to have Jay and Caribou back on. It is always a wonderful time to get to visit with them. And today we're going to get a visit about, what was last year like for them? But most importantly, what does the future hold? What does it look like this year? We get to go back to Las Vegas. We get to see each other. We get to shake hands again. We're going to get to go back to a conference. And of all the conferences out there in our space, this is the conference that you have to go to. So we get to visit. We get to talk about what all is in store for us.
Lee and I are big fans of this conference.
Big fans.
The first few times we went, we were just like a couple of yo-yos getting off the train in New York City for the first time in the big city. It was just amazed by the whole production. And I don't know about shaking hands, though. I don't know.
I'm going to shake everybody's hand.
I think I'm going to be fist bumping.
I think everyone needs a sign like, hey, I'm okay shaking hands. I'm not okay shaking hands. That way it's not awkward, because it's going to be real awkward watching those hands. So
yeah, like if your hands are tied behind your back, that would be a sign.
That would be a sign. Like, don't touch me. I'm just saying, let's just toss that out there to the guys that, green means shake hands, red means no. That way everybody feels comfortable.
Well, whatever the case may be, we'll be there. And we'll look forward to seeing all you there. And please find us and tell us how our podcast helps you go to sleep every night.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or however it is that you use this podcast.
You know what, Rob? I've talked to like 4 people this week that I haven't talked to in many, many, many months. And they all say that they keep up with us through the podcast. I think people actually listen to this thing.
No, that can't be.
I think so.
That's the craziest of everything this is. I mean, the fact that we're on like episode 100 and whatever, and we've talked to so many big names in the industry. The fact that people actually listen to this is the most amazing part to me.
It really is.
It's probably because of you, I'm guessing. It's because of the smart one.
Yeah, you're probably right. But isn't it funny though? I mean, if you think about it, all of this podcast really came out of InsureTech Connect.
Yep.
Looking around saying, wow, this is a whole world.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk about this. We want to bring this to light. We need to make sense of it all, because we looked around and thought, oh my goodness, I don't understand. I don't know exactly what I'm looking at. But now I feel like I can actually go into one of these InsureTech Connects and I understand it.
And it was none other than Caribou Honig, who generously gave us an interview very early. He was like number 2 interview we had on our show. And he introduced us to the concept that this is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that word has come up 1,000 times on our podcast. And it's so true.
Right.
And here's 2 of the guys who are kind of the proprietors of the ecosystem. So without further ado, let's get to them and listen to what they have to say, which is a lot. You'll enjoy it. And as always, thanks Jay and Caribou for doing this. So here's the co-founders, chairman and CEO of InsureTech Connect, Caribou Honig, and Jay Weintraub. Hey, everybody, we are here with our very special guests. Once again, the two co-founders of InsureTech Connect. You all remember InsureTech Connect. We certainly do. And we have with us today the hatted one, Caribou Honig, and the unhatted one, Jay Weintraub. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for letting it be hat optional. Thank you.
We love having you here. In fact, we always joke that when you appear on the podcast 5 times, you get a smoking jacket.
Purely a joke, but yeah.
And I think, Caribou, you might have just earned your smoking jacket.
Yeah.
I look forward to it in the mail. Or you can just hand deliver it to me in Vegas in October. That'd be all right.
That sounds like a great idea.
I think that would be. Do you guys put a lot of thought into what you wear to the conference every day?
I'm mostly, as you'd expect, like trying to coordinate the accessory on my head with the sports coat or suit I'm wearing.
And I am usually thinking far more about the walk-on music, because it is like both interesting and indulgent, and really clearly matters more to me than anyone else. But that is certainly on my mind more. And then making sure that I am not in the exact same outfit from the year prior or 2 years prior. 3 years is okay, but not 2 years.
That is true. You got to think about that.
I think I remember a couple of years ago, one of the first times I ever saw you, Jay, was you came out on the big stage during an intro, and you had on a suit and tennis shoes. Did I get that right?
Think you might have someone else, being mistaken. But so if we consider like Cole Haans that are comfortable versions, if we call those tennis shoes, then yes.
Right.
So no, Rob.
Not quite.
What do I know?
Maybe
Not
not
quite.
quite.
I know. Well, we're thrilled to have you guys back with us, and we thank you for joining us again. And we're here today to talk about the big show. There's so much to talk about and unpack, because not only are we here to talk about InsureTech 2021, which is coming up in October and is very exciting, and I'm sure you guys will tell us all about that, but also to talk about the journey that you guys have gone through. And so why don't we start with the big event and talking about that. Jay, why don't you tell us when it is, where it is, what's happening? Give us some details.
Oh, I'd be happy to. So the big event, InsureTech Vegas, will be October 4th through 6th at the Mandalay Bay. And we are just cannot wait to have everyone back together for as much, I would say, as we have seen just how much can be accomplished digitally. I feel like we've been, it's only shown just how much better it is to be face-to-face.
I agree with you. I'm looking at this as being the first big conference back. I know that people are starting to take trips and business travel is coming back, but this really looks to be on my calendar, the first big event for the insurance industry. Come back out and get back to normal.
I think that's exactly right. My sense is that the animal spirits are starting to really, sort of pop up and be very keen. I think a lot of people are going to take the summer and do more of the personal travel, right? And get their sort of feet wet with that. And then, come Labor Day, kids will go back to school. Gosh, we all hope. Anyone who's a parent desperately hopes for that.
Right.
And then, business travel can resume. And I like to say it's better to take one trip to Vegas and meet with the 20 folks that you want to meet than to have to take 20 different trips to 20 different cities to meet those same people.
So this year, a brand new venue.
So brand new venue. It was hard to believe that we had actually started to outgrow the MGM Grand.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It is. It's one of those things where you look back, when I think back to Caribou and I meeting in a Panera Bread as we're hashing this out, and we're only meeting in Panera because I apparently can't listen to what city, in Virginia he lives in, and picked one that was 4 hours north of him. We always knew it was possible, but you still have to pinch yourself a little bit. So the Mandalay Bay is I actually had a chance to go visit it last week, and it's great. It's a great venue for those that are, we think about, it's not just what you do during the hours of the conference. It's about all that surrounds it. And I think that's also one thing that makes Mandalay special, is it doesn't just have more room, more space, easier to spread out. but it also has great entertaining, sort of like venues. So I think the overall experience is going to feel elevated.
I love talking about the show, but I even love more talking about that story. I don't think many people have heard of Jay flying into literally the wrong city. So
wait,
we're not
is that true?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the origin story of ITC, but I got to jump in here and tell this story. So it's like early in, we're starting to like do some planning, getting to know each other a bit better as we start to work on this together. And, he's based in New York. I'm in Richmond. So it's a lot easier for him to sort of fly somewhere than for me. So he flies in. I come fly into Richmond. I'll pick you up. It'll be great. Well, in and out, no worries. And then the day before or whatever, and he's like, I think I'm flying into Washington, D.C. That's a mid-Atlantic, city with actually the airports are in the airports are in Virginia, so that's got to be right.
Yeah.
So long and the short of it is like we decide, okay, well, let's meet halfway from where you're flying into and where I actually live. And well, that's a little town called Fredericksburg along I-95, and there's a Panera there. We had like our first real planning session for ITC back in, gosh, that's probably late 2015, early 2016.
That is fantastic. And so from there, you said, we got to plan it. We got to go somewhere where everyone knows where they're flying into, and let's go to Las Vegas. As long as they don't go to Las Vegas, New Mexico, right?
Exactly. That's a great way to think of it.
Man. I'm thinking that maybe they talked about maybe one day we can be on this crazy little InsureTech podcast.
Maybe that's what they talked about.
Did you guys talk about that?
Oh, I think Caribou was sitting there going, "What am I doing? What am I doing?"
Who is this yo-yo?
The guy didn't even come to the right city.
Who is this person who's going to be in charge of setting up the logistics of this event?
Logistics
in the wrong city?
Wow. Well, you're all in the right place now. So tell us more. I know that you've secured a really big name that I know well, Evan Greenberg, as a keynote speaker this year. It looks like the lineup is starting to firm up. You guys must be excited about that.
We are. I think when we think back again to, because this is sort of origin story time, and we think back to some of the people that we knew we always wanted. It was like, okay, one day I hope that we are an important enough and valuable enough platform that Evan Greenberg will, sort of join our stage. In many ways, it's like mission accomplished. I think also excited about, sort of Chris Krebs, who is the former director of the
right.
So he's the former CISO for Department of Homeland Security. I think, cyber, we can't go a day without some sort of cyber news, and
so important. Yeah.
And I think, for us at least, it's one thing to talk about what's the insurance angle, but at the end of the day, we're insuring a risk. So what's that risk look like? And does the industry have its like fingers on the pulse, sort of like of that particular, risk? And, from a startup perspective, it's like, gosh, right? You look back to 2016, you think about companies like Hippo and that are now, sort of will most likely be public at the time. Mm-hmm. And we look at the, sort of the funding. And I think in last count, we had like $4 billion on our stage, and that was just from the last number of sort of 12 months. I mean, it's you think about 2016. We have this year. We had a CEO of WeFox. They just announced at 650, something over $600 million, the largest round ever. That was more than the entire sort of industry had raised in sort of 2016. So it's
right.
The industry has definitely come a long way. I'm going to take a breath so that Caribou can jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going on all the other stuff we have.
Well, look, I think that we continue to have the show be more and more expansive as people recognize that not only is insurance sort of spanning the entire world and the entire industry, the entire economy, beyond just sort of itself. But I think as we start to have, I hope more and more companies from outside of the insurance industry proper start to show up, start to be there, even be on stage, because the intersection with insurance and InsureTech and the rest of the economy is so important.
Yeah, how is that going? I think back to all of the companies you had that weren't really insurance related, but they are now. I mean, is that still a driving force? I see here, General Motors, right, has a presence there. You have people and you have companies that you wouldn't really think about insurance, but they absolutely fit. I mean, is it really coming together?
I would say absolutely. I mean, General Motors is a great example. We think back to how risk is usually underwritten, and especially in the OEMs, you have a car manufacturer that makes a car, and then you have insurance companies that decide, what is it going to cost if they're, sort of going to insure it, and that's sort of that barrier is sort of representative of the barriers inside of an insurance company that we've always wanted to sort of break down, because they really should. The insurance piece should be developed hand in hand. And especially when you talk about new technologies that are in cars, that an OEM is going to have a far better understanding of exactly what those technologies are. So I think the other one that comes up a lot as you think about embedded insurance, and it's a topic that we're going to hear a lot about, kind of like this year. People are always saying, gee, if someone's buying insurance and they're buying a product, rarely is insurance what they're buying. They're buying something else. So why not have insurance sold, there? And that particular of like, is it going to hit, scale? But it is, I think, one of the new elephants in the room is like, is distribution, especially for smaller products, going to be disrupted by, the sort of this continued APIification?
One of the things I want to ask you about is the bold move you guys made to say, we're doing it this year. We're going to Las Vegas. We're having the conference. As we're all experiencing right now, as we speak, things are starting to loosen up and they're starting to happen. But a couple months ago, when you guys announced it, it was still kind of risky. I mean, what was the calculus? How did you guys make the decision? Or did you have a crystal ball that helped you with it? Talk about that process.
It's funny that you use the term crystal ball, because that is actually what Jay and I would talk about. Like, look into the crystal ball. What if I told you, Jay, that you have 3 crystal balls? Each one reveals how many cases per day will be at in the US, right? Come June, right? Come September of this year. And I just couldn't tell you for sure which of the 3 crystal balls is right. There's the low case, the medium case, the high case. What would you do differently if you knew that was going to be the answer, though? So we had lots of those kinds of discussions. And the good news is, as most or all of your listeners here will know, that being in the insurance business, there's a lot that, math and actuarial prediction can do for you. I actually think that a lot of the math was pretty straightforward once they knew that they had vaccines, once they knew how many they could be producing in Q1 and Q2 of this year. I mean, there's been little, fits and starts, little speed bumps here and there. But even in January, it was pretty clear that by June, we'd probably be more demand constrained than supply constrained on vaccines. Right? Think about that. In January, we kind of knew that anyone who wanted to walk in and get a vaccine in the US could. Once you know that with your crystal ball, it becomes a lot easier to say, well, these are really good vaccines, by the way. Therefore, people who want to go to Vegas in October ought to be able to do so pretty safely. And we'll do our part, of course, to help ensure that. But it was kind of just, in my view, it was mostly math, almost actuarial math.
And in my view, this is where I'm immensely thankful to have had Caribou and have Caribou as a partner, because between the two of us, there's one of us that looks at things sort of logically. There's another one of us that runs around freaked out at times, and they're not the same person. So, I think it was. I will oftentimes, say to Caribou, like he'll give such a great actuarial argument, to which I'll say, but where's the human factor in this? And surely, it can never go according to plan. Nothing ever goes according to plan.
Don't
And
you know?
it was certainly not. It wasn't easy. It wasn't nerve wracking, but it also spoke to to really, this is a great chance for me to thank Caribou, because
Stop it, Jay. Stop it.
So how's the response been? Are you seeing the kind of numbers and the kind of registration that you anticipated? I mean, just to take a step back, let's go back to 2019. You guys have a record-setting conference, another amazing year of growth and movement forward. And then, of course, in the conference world, you guys are one of the most affected industries that there was. You were essentially closed down. I mean, so coming out of that, and we want to talk about COVID for a minute, but not quite yet. What kind of expectations did you have coming into this?
And this is another good example between, sort of like where I will oftentimes be a little bit more conservative. And I think Caribou, sort of is willing to have faith in the animal spirits of things. But as we, kind of came out of this, the first decision that was on our minds was, go back to Caribou's, point about it looked by even January that it was very, there would be vaccine supplies and that, the math would support a safe gathering. And so then it was a question of when's the right time to put a flag in the ground and say, yes, we're getting back in person. How does it make sure that it is, sort of like responsible? Because at the end of the day, it's as much as we want to be back, like our priority is to this community. Like they're the ones that made us. And so we want to, return the favor.
Right.
So that was, I'd say, one of the earliest things that we had to decide is, okay, like we knew by January that, we're going to do this thing in person, but we waited, I'd say closer to March before we said, broadly speaking, to the public, like this thing's happening. And then to answer your question about the, sort of what were the expectations, it's it was also a harder one because, the data points of events, no one had come back yet. So, and events are across the board. We happen to be very, I'd say fortunate that the insurance industry and InsureTech in particular had still had such, sort of demand after that brief, sort of like hiccup of uncertainty, I'd say right March through May. But it, it sort of was validated in many ways in industry. So it was like, okay, we have this industry that's doing great, but no one really knows what that number is going to be. Caribou, the math, sort of put his math hat on and was sort of, well, we're not going to get internationals. So, they'll have to factor that out. But in our business, sponsorships is usually a leading indicator of the ultimate demand. And it has been unexpected. The number of companies that have come out in support of what we're doing, truly phenomenal. The number of companies that are, I'd say in many ways, almost first-time sponsors. It's amazing. Like the maturity, like all of a sudden, I feel like we feel the maturity. The startups, I think about, I was talking to Snapsheet the other day, and they're suggesting that, a panel that they want to do. And, they came back and there was like, it was all what I would have thought of as startups, but these are all companies that are now at scale and are real clients. A company like Snapsheet. So that was a very longer way of saying it has been a just phenomenal interest, so much so that on the sponsorship front, we're, practically, sort of sold out. And we've been seeing fantastic, sort of support and demand from registrations as well.
I was on your sponsorship and expo page, almost overwhelming. It's literally an InsureTech who's who and an industry who's who. I mean, the support you guys have garnered is very impressive. Congratulations on that.
Jay, you brought up something there a moment ago about thinking of companies as startups, and now that they're fully at scale. I mean, think about all the companies who 4 or 5 years ago were just in their infancy stage, and now we rely on them every day. They're major players. I mean, are there any examples that stand out to you of success stories for younger insured techs who have really come into their own after being introduced or coming around InsureTech early on in their stages?
So, and in Caribou, feel free to jump in at any moment that you want.
Well, then I'll jump in right now, Jay.
Oh, good. Okay, good. It's as good a moment as any.
Yeah. I think that there's wave after wave after wave happening. And I think that's what's really exciting. So back in 2016, when InsureTech was just kind of becoming a term and, we were debating, do you have that middle E in there or not? And
you went there.
Well, we went there. I know.
That is true. That is a thing. Yeah.
I think that you saw these companies getting these seed and then Series A stage investments from name brand VCs coming into the category. And, look, you can run a long list and probably have to give kudos to Lemonade for really drawing the most attention to the sector and using their sort of corporate branding immensely well. But you're seeing that first Cambrian explosion happen, but I think it's sort of another wave after wave of that, and that's part of what's exciting. And I think there's no shortage of new trends happening. Jay mentioned before, embedded, right, is really one of the hot button topics. I like to talk about the extension into invisible insurance. You've got some folks in the no code arena, right, that seem to be making really amazing progress. There's the old, I don't know if it's a investment banking or a consulting joke that's not really funny around, like, there's really just two strategies in business: bundling and unbundling. and both of those things are being done right now in the insurance category. I like to think all of these things are actually enabled by the APIification of the insurance stack. Right? You need the APIs to embed, to do the no code, to bundle and rebundle. I think that that still looks like the most important trend, and you've got all these technology entrepreneurs applying that to the insurance industry.
I was just staring here at some of our, sort of speakers, and I was looking at Pi Insurance. And I remember I was with John, and, this was, I don't know that they'd even raised their first, sort of amount of money. And, and that was probably only 3 years ago. And so we fast forward to today, they've had a 9-figure round, and they are an established player, like direct channel, agency channel. Right. They do good business. And you think about a company like Pi, or as I look here and think about, or I think about some of the other ones that have recently raised, like a Clear Cover. Obviously, I've mentioned Hippo, sort of a lot. Next Insurance, like great example, where I've talked to some people who are like Next Insurance is just one of the best businesses, sort of that's out there. And we have so many names now that if we fast forward 10 years, we'd almost be surprised if they weren't there and even bigger. And that is just big, like mental shift. And I think just from like the theme standpoint, what's always been so exciting about insurance is you pick any part of the value chain. It could be product development, could be claims, it could be underwriting. You pick anything you want, and there's lots and lots of innovation there. Any product, I think about small commercial, right? You think about different parts of life, and you can find really interesting things. And at each intersection, personal claims, a value chain meets product, they're so big that we have this just, almost overwhelming amount of opportunity that has been fantastic to see.
Probably 100 episodes ago, we used to talk about this neat ecosystem of InsureTech and how it was made up of these 4 or 5 or 6 different pieces. The ecosystem of InsureTech is huge now. There are so many players, or so many aspects to it. Talk to me a little bit about InsureTech Connect and how, what do you do to allow somebody to come to the conference and to kind of live within the section of the ecosystem that they want to? Are there tracks? Are there specific classes that individuals need to go to, or is it just all thrown at everybody?
Now, before Jay answers that, I do, and I know Jay, I have to jump in here before he answers that. I just want to make two little comments from what for your last question. One is on Pi Insurance that Jay mentioned. I think I actually met with John, the founder of Pi, at that same Panera, in order to talk about his seed investment round. So that a lot's happened at that Panera in Fredericksburg. And then the other thing I'd point out is really it's striking how you talk about the expansiveness of the ecosystem, and InsureTech is just really taking over so much that's interesting happening here. My neighbor across the street actually works in InsureTech. Right. And it was just like, how is this possible? But he does. A company called Foresight that probably no one's heard of, but it's doing workers' comp innovation. Like, oh my gosh. So it's just really striking to me that if my neighbor across the street is randomly working for an InsureTech company, there's something happening here. Now, Jay, off to you.
This is one of your gifts, is the way that you sort of package these insights, and that's a really striking one. Like, if my neighbor, how do we measure a trend? Right? How do you measure something? And like, that's an unexpected way to sort of measure it. It's like, yep, is your neighbor or someone you know in this thing when they weren't, before? As for the structure of the show, it is, I think back to our very first, sort of like year, and part of what makes us different is that we deliberately set out to be an ecosystem, and we deliberately set out to be something that was a big tent. And that has a lot of benefits. It also has some initial headwinds, because what it means is like, you're not going to come to our show to learn. And when I say learn, we do not offer continuing education credits, and it's not like tutorials or in-depth, sort of information. I'd say it's much more like a documentary. It's more like Sports Center in terms of like sort of the consumption. And it was like funny. I have these things that at the time are super scary. I remember a insurer CIO came to the event, and like two of his colleagues, and I think this was 2017, and I got this scathing email that basically said, my CIO hated this so much that he left after like a day, and it was really rough, depressingly rough when you're just in your sort of second year. And he's sort of like, you need to do go to a Gartner and learn how to do a conference. And I think it speaks to this is about what moves the needle here. And again, at the risk of giving Caribou too many compliments, I think my compliment meter to Caribou has already exceeded its max. So I'll have to be careful now and find some ways to disagree with him. But our ultimate success is to catalyze. It's that company A and company B meet each other, and a year later, 2 years later, it's in action at scale, and the policyholder benefits. And like, that is sort of how we can make a difference more than anything else. So with that in mind, we cover a lot. There are 7 tracks that are running. There's a demo stage that is also running. We are touching upon, sort of as much of the product lines and value chain as possible. And it really stems from the people, though. Are the right people there, so that if you have that accidental interaction, like the best wedding, you may not know everyone, but you'll have enough in common to strike up a productive conversation.
Our job is always to make sure it's an environment where people can get business done, where they can get the deals done, whether it's a funding deal, whether it's an investment, whether it's a distribution partnership, whatever. Our job, the real measurement of our success, is whether business is getting done there.
I mean, small example, I'm looking here at our spreadsheet of speakers, and I see, Kate Stillwell from Jumpstart. And, she met, I think, Hank at one of our first events from Lloyd's. So we think about the number of, I think she met one of her first funders and one of her first, sort of paper. And 4 years later, we're having a conversation. It's like, yeah, I don't actually have to come now to try and get, those things done. Like, it's now time for something, the next level of the business. And we love that, because now you got a new product in market that wasn't going to be there otherwise.
So how do you keep the excitement that, started 5-6 years ago with your first conference, as the space becomes more mature, as there's much larger players who are far more formidable? This isn't a bunch of, tech insurance people trying to make something happen. It's gone way past that. How do you keep it exciting and fun, which is really one of the hallmarks to me of InsureTech Connect, is you want to be there because the excitement level is so high.
Well, Rob, I'm going to start by disagreeing a little bit with your premise, right? So I think that there is wave after wave of innovation, and the way you frame the question makes it sound like, okay, well, the startups of yesteryear have sort of won, or at least won their place alongside the incumbents. So pity the poor fool who tries to create a new InsureTech startup. And I'm putting words in your mouth, obviously, but there's over time, there are platform shifts, right? The PC, the smartphone, the internet. I think COVID is actually a platform shift. And I think that COVID has actually opened the door for new sets of innovations that maybe people weren't thinking about before. So I actually am kind of excited to see how both the startups and the companies who've been around for 100 years, how they are adapting, or what new stuff they're creating either in response to or almost inspired by what's happened in the last year and a half with COVID.
And by the way, I think that's a great way to put it. I think scale is another one. If we think about a company that's gone from zero to where they are today, it's a huge amount. But from where they are today to where they could be, and I was thinking about, what is it, like State Farm is it somewhere around like 80 billion in gross written premium, I think, annually? And,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and Lemonade in 2020 was 200 million. So we think about there's still a long way to go here. And despite this, it's early. It's early.
So we've talked about InsureTech Connect. We've talked about the speakers. We've talked about the venue, but we haven't talked about the party. And I'm very curious, is there going to be a party at the end of InsureTech Connect? A lot of people haven't been to parties. We haven't been to venues really to hear anything. Is that going to be a part of it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. But in a nod towards the fact that I actually am, not super excited. Like as an audience of one here, like I am not the guy who's going to rush back to a concert the first thing. But I can say, and so one thing in a nod to people who are like me, it's going to be outside. So Mandalay has a fantastic facility called The Beach.
Yes.
And so a perfect venue for us to sort of wrap up 2021.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's a great venue.
Will any end up in the water? That's my question. That's really my question now. It's like, will anyone actually end up in the water, though? And it's funny. It might seem a little bit like, well, what does this have to do with insurance or InsureTech? And I think what we realized, all sorts of unintended, sort of like results here. One of the things that we heard several times that we never would have thought would be a goal of ours is that people say, thank you. I feel inspired. Like I enjoy this industry. I feel proud to be in this industry. So we look at the totality of the experience is if people leave Vegas feeling energized, like there is going to be a tangible impact that happens as a result. So we want that. We think a little bit of fun. It is it's long days. It's a lot to do. You need to have a little bit of fun at the end so that when you head back, you're charged.
Yeah, fun is a good backdrop for serendipity, I think. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
And so they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, a fun environment makes people more likely to actually have those serendipitous conversations with other attendees that they didn't even know that they wanted to meet with. But it turns out they actually had a lot to talk about and potentially do business with.
Yeah, both Lee and I have many stories about just that. People that we met serendipitously at ITC. It promotes that. I want, before we go, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about COVID. Not that we haven't all talked enough or thought enough or lived enough in COVID already, but I'm interested in what it was like to run a conference company during a global pandemic. And I'm sure some of those answers are obvious to our audience, but you guys were actually on the inside of it every day trying to make it happen. Share with us some of the insights that you've gained from that experience, and also maybe some insights about how you think that the conference business maybe has changed or changed forever.
Caribou, do you want to start that one off?
I'll start. But, Jay, since you actually do all the work, right, and I just get to be a very nice figurehead, I'll kick it back to you pretty quick. I'll actually point to Jay has assembled an absolutely top-notch team of people, right, for the event, right? A few that you might interact with if you're registering or if you're sponsoring, but really there's a team of like a dozen folks that are making it all happen, right? And boy, you think about it being stressful for Jay or myself, it's really stressful for them, right? They are trying to manage all sorts of contingencies and, well, what if the crystal ball turns out like this or that, or what if the crystal ball is wrong? Hey, I've never encountered this kind of situation before with this attendee or potential attendee. What do we do here? So I'll tip the hat actually to the team that Jay's got. That's the most important thing.
Agreed. I mean, that you think about it is trench warfare. And so you have to think about who do you want to be in the trenches with? So Claire, I'm really glad that you brought that up. It is no, right? It'd be lying if we said it wasn't awful. And it was not, like it was, gut wrenching on many levels. But, one of the things that we sort of ultimately had to like challenge ourselves is this is a moment, right? Somebody is going to do really well during this period. Someone is. So with every sort of shift in the winds, it's going to go, somebody gets a headwind, someone gets a tailwind. So it really is a great chance if you can extract yourself and really try to analyze the situation. And so for us, it was also a chance to say, what are we, right? What are we at our core? And we decided that, we're not an events company at our core. Like, we're a connections business. We are here to serve an industry. And we also had to ask ourselves, like, how do you feel like you get to play some amount of offense and not just defense? Because you need that too. So we also asked ourselves, like, what does it mean to be ITC? What can we do that still feels like it's ITC and serving the industry? And what can we do to feel like we're actually building and playing offense here a little bit? And for us, it actually turned out to be a lot of time getting closer to the community and building a lot of, sort of like tech as we think about the future and saying, how do we, to Caribou's point about serendipity, how can we do it? We've obviously thought a lot about the future, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Like, is there going to be a room for in-person events again? Are we all going to be wearing, sort of VR and just interacting in a space? And I look at something like the Oculus as a good example. And like, immersive gaming experience has not become the dominant platform.
No.
So the same thing with agents, right? There's a lot of stuff you can buy online, but right, direct has not, is not the majority of how premiums, policies are purchased. So right. For us, it's okay. We always are going to believe in this sort of Super Bowl defining moment, because like, you're there, and when you're there and you're in it, you're going to meet people and you're going to talk to people. But what happens otherwise? You're going to get distracted. And so I think there's a level of, efficiency. So there's a little bit, I'm going to start an introduction, start a relationship, but it's not going to get replaced. So I guess we look at it as, the digital virtual world is a good, sort of augment and has a role, but it is not yet time to say, okay, the in-person, does not have the same value.
And COVID has been a crisis playing out in slow motion,
yes,
which is both good and bad, right? When it plays out in slow motion, you can actually think about it a little bit more. You can stare at it. You don't have to make an impulse choice. But it sure does wear on you, day after day, week after week, month after month. We've all experienced some aspect of COVID as a slow motion crisis. But I will remind you that Jay and I actually had to deal with a rapid action crisis.
That's right.
At ITC 2017.
That's right.
When sadly, the biggest mass shooting in American history occurred, a mile away from our venue, hours before we were getting started with the event. And, navigating that rapid motion crisis maybe helped equip us to navigate this slow motion crisis as well.
So how's the response been? We have a world coming out of COVID, hopefully. How's the response been?
People want to see their colleagues. People want to see the people that they work in their same company, and they want to meet the people that are outside their company. People are eager to spend time with like-minded people.
That the response has been overwhelmingly positive. And what we see right now is you see companies that are making the decision. I mean, JP Morgan's a great example where they've fully believe that they're going to get more business done by being out there again. And and so I think I'm always a little bit hesitant to sort of toot the in-person benefit, because there's a clear benefit to us. But I think we are seeing it objectively, and that again, back to this idea that like, I don't have to travel. Well, maybe the bar is higher for certain things, but at the end of the day, like, is a difference between buying something on a credit card and paying for it in an invoice. And and when you buy it on a credit card, you don't necessarily need a relationship. When you're going to make a deal that is millions of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, you need a little bit more there. And the people who are going to be there are the ones that I think are still going to ultimately, sort of win. And that's why we love being a place where it's inspired and deals get done. And at the end of the day, the policyholder benefits.
As we close, I'll give you guys 1 minute. Anything you want to tease, anything you want to perhaps still hit on vis-a-vis October in Las Vegas at InsureTech Connect with this couple minutes we have left?
Well, I'll probably go, and again, by saying we hope and cannot wait to see everyone October 4th through the 6th. I think what is also very interesting this year is it probably will be our best, sort of in-person lineup of speakers. And we continue to try and create new ways as we've gotten bigger to bring groups together. So this year we are continuing on with our Agency Connect, which we are rebranding this year to be Broker Tech Connect. Right? We're again doubling down on distribution and believing that agents are and brokers are the path to distribution. And we're also launching something called Group Tech Connect. We think about the shift in sort of health and the rise of, or reinvigoration of the work site and voluntary benefits. So getting, sort of deeper into the group space is something else that is going to be new this year. And, I think what people have come to love, which is a place to feel excited and to get to meet just world-class people. As I scroll through not just our speakers, but the people who are attending, hard not to just feel like I cannot wait to see what's going to come out of it.
And I will take the last word by quoting Jay, so he gets the last word too, which is the biggest trend in insurance really does seem to be InsureTech. And I think that the folks who are able to be at ITC this October will continue to move that forward.
Well, speaking as somebody who works every day in the actual doing of insurance or the processing of insurance, I will fully agree with you. And the carriers have embraced it at a level and at a pace that was unforeseen and never seen prior to COVID. So if there's something positive that's come out of it, it lit the fire or lit it brighter underneath InsureTech going forward. And your guys' event is a cornerstone of that whole universe. And we thank you for doing it and for everything that you put out. And thank you very much for being with us today once again. And we'll hold you to the invitation again next year and look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas.
It's been great. It's been great.
Thank you both.
Jay and Caribou, thank you so much once again for being with us. Lots of information, Lee. Lots for people to chew on. And let's get excited. We're going to Vegas in a few months.
Viva Las Vegas.
Viva Las
No.
And look for us. We'll be in the broadcast booth.
Mm-hmm. I'll be in the orange suit, and you'll be in the blue suit.
That's true, and we'll have our headsets on, so everyone will know it's us. In fact, what'll be really weird is we'll be walking around the whole conference with our headsets on.
Yeah, but really, I mean,
even though they won't be plugged into anything.
But if somebody sees us and actually recognizes us, come up and say hi. We'd love to visit with you. Just for the record, I don't look exactly like my caricature, but I guess I look enough like it that it hasn't changed in all these episodes.
That's a matter of opinion.
It makes my daughter cry.
Well, we're not going to make you cry, and we're going to say goodbye. So until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.